Well, I think we must quite understand Auma in context. Understanding her in context would call for understanding the culture of the Luo people, but also understanding what are the things that bedevil the nation, and primarily the Luo nation, because that's who she was particularly addressing. You need to understand that culturally, Luos are communal. So they are socialists of sorts. They believe what they have has to be shared with other people. That is something that predates our existence.
And these are things you were taught as you were growing up?
These are things we were taught as we were growing up. Okay. So the Luo nation is not a nation of, extreme right capitalists who own it for themselves. To date, when I go home, after my mother has had a bumper harvest, she will distribute to those poor women and widows. And sometimes we have to fight about it because my coming to Nairobi has made me a bit of a capitalist. And so the sharing, the attitude and act of sharing is something that is entrenched in our culture. That said, you must also understand that over the time, the Luo nation believed in having a harvest, having granaries, which Auma at some point called a Nderu, and storing food for the future. But what has happened over time is we have become an M-Pesa economy. So that nitumie M-Pesa, nitafute chakula. Over time, the younger generation of our Luo people have ceased to till their farms, to find it lucrative to go to the farms, to get involved in agriculture. That does not mean, however, that they have not found other means of making income. Remember, we have boda riders. Remember, they are doing other different menial jobs. However, it would be best placed if they understood that tilling their land, because we have large tracts of land, and Auma is not wrong.
Abbas referenced that. He said beautiful land in Kogelo.
Beautiful land. If we would utilize, like Israel has, every bit of land that we deem arable and able to produce food in this country, we would be a food secure nation. But it is a problem of attitude as well. Increasingly, younger people want to land white-collar jobs.
And this is
there
across
is
the country.
Massive shift, immigration from the rural to the urban areas. And when they come to the urban areas, some of them leave their large tracts of arable lands in the village unattended. They come to the city, and because they cannot fit in sometimes, you have an increased population and growth of the slum areas. Now, this is what devolution has attempted to curtail
and reverse,
to get people back to the villages and help them appreciate that going back to our villages and doing these things is not altogether too bad. We must be able, however, to know that some of these people are just young people. So what a woman has done, which is she's done a common thing but uncommonly well, she has just done the equivalent of what we call village polytechnics. It's not something we do not have in this country.
We don't have.
We have them. But how have they been run? That's the question.
That's the question.
When you call it village polytechnic, for a young star who sees that going to the urban areas is it, and then you call the other one vocational and resource center.
Yes.
Therein.
You know where they'll be attracted to. Jonah, come in.
Okay, well, let me say thank you first for inviting me to your show. Let me say that Auma's remarks actually may be an undoing to what she has actually initiated, which is actually a very good project.
Undoing in what way?
In other words, the way Oceania just said that, the Luo community, they have that kind of sense of togetherness and communal kind of, aspect in that part of the country, and which is actually common and ubiquitous in our African
culture. In fact,
cultures.
I see parallels everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me a few things which stood out to me, which I feel like Auma did not do very well, in the way even the reception of Obama. Obama is perceived to be a son of Kenya, and even when he was giving his remarks there, he said everybody says I'm their brother. There's a sense in which expectation of people was that when he comes, maybe even actually waves and all that. So the way they made that thing look like a very family affair may in the end make people, you know, have a feeling like, oh, you know, that's just their own. And they may actually make youth who are going to benefit in the end try to be, you know, have.
So you're telling me a young person who is jobless would not go there because...
No, I'm just saying like what I saw, from what I saw. But in the other good side of it is that, you know, we have to cultivate youth efficacy. You know, the sense of feeling like you are able to do something. Because when you look at the Sauti Kuu, I think the slogan is that you own your own future. So Bill Clinton says, what we call talent and ability is ubiquitous, is everywhere. The only problem is that we have, the distribution of opportunities are limited. That's why, you know, people in Africa, for example, like in Kenya, we don't do very well in football, maybe because we don't have a way of harnessing these things from the villages and so on like that. You cannot say that people maybe in Brazil, they have very good football. It's because we don't harness these things from the beginning, and we have this talent, you know, created from the beginning. So what Auma is doing is great. And the the thing which she was talking about is also everywhere. So the only thing we need to make sure we do is to give our youth the ability and the skills, so they can use those skills to go forward. So the only downside, from my opinion, is the way that she put the sentiments and the way it was received. Because I've checked the social media from, you know, Siaya and Kisumu on social media, and there's a lot of backlash.
There's a lot of backlash.
There's a lot of backlash.
Okay.
And we should be able to see that as something which she didn't do very well.
Okay. And again, she's entitled to her opinion. Wanjeri, I want to come to you and sort of make this conversation broad and look at the nation as a whole. But before that, I have two quotes by Auma. One on sort of opinion quote with Anne Kiguta last week. But what I actually want to do is to take you instead to the one that she spoke yesterday, which, you know, was more comprehensive. And thereafter, her brother also spoke on what he sees as the potential of the youth in this country. But let's first start with the Auma one from yesterday.
An interview about the syndrome of Gonya Gonya, and I'm adding to it Konya Konya. That means actually unbind me, untie me, help me, help me. Give me, give me. I don't want my community to be a begging community. I got a lot of flack for it because people got annoyed and said, why am I calling Luos beggars? I'm not calling Luos beggars. I'm telling Luos we need to start taking care of ourselves. And it is not difficult because we can. There's a lot of wealth here. The wealth has been shown in the film, so that cuts my speech down to half, which is good because I don't want to be too long. So you see what it is. The people can use that. There's also the human resource, the young people. People worry about having so many young people on the African continent, jobless, idle. I don't worry about having young people on the African continent. I say they're an opportunity, not a problem. They're not a challenge. We adults are the problem. We are the challenge because we don't create the jobs. We don't create the spaces for these young people to use their potential and actually be able to live a life that's dignified without having to be dependent on others.
Wanjeri, let's broaden this discussion. As she spoke, I could see parallels in practically every community. And how you can tell is, when you look at those who make it in those communities, and if you get a chance to take their phone, chances are request after request for money for this or that from someone back at home. It's a national issue, not a local issue. It's just that she's brought it about in the context of her community. How did we get here as a nation? What sort of issues do you think have contributed to the handouts culture that we find ourselves in at the moment?
Theft. Grand theft. You know.
You have surprised your co-panelists.
You know, when I saw this whole backlash against her online, it was only focused on the Luo community. And I couldn't understand why people were so angry. Now, when he explains it, now I get, okay, so I get the connection why the Luo community or the Luo.
Or some people on social media.
Nation felt insulted. But this is happening everywhere. I mean, look at where I come from in Murang'a. The culture of handouts in Murang'a exists. It is in the entire country. It is not a Luo thing. But we need to ask ourselves, how have we got here? It is not, we've not woken up and the young people have decided, I need to you know, from Muranga, my cousin will call me, send me 100 bob because they don't have milk. Now, we tell these young people, you have a shamba, farm. All right, so my cousin will decide, okay, let me sell, you know, farm some potatoes. Then he's going to take that, the potato farming that he's going to do, middlemen will come because of all the corruption that is around farming. You know, it's not that we do not have people, or you know, these young people cannot farm. We need to stop blaming these young people or these people who are asking for these handouts. We need to ask ourselves, why are they asking for them? What opportunities are we giving them that they're going to be able to get something into their pocket, okay, that is going to make sure they don't ask for this money? The culture of handouts really is a form of slavery. So what happens is the people who have it, the politicians, for instance, every 5 years they come, they give, our mothers are now wearing Jubilee lassos. Okay, this red, colorful lassos written Jubilee. That's another form of handout. It may not have been in cash, but it's a lasso. Okay, so it's a form of bribing the people, keeping them in this culture of being needful and being needy towards these politicians or this leadership. So we elect them, then they spend the next 5 years stealing, and then after the 5 years, they give us something back in the form of handouts. So it's a culture of, I don't like using the word corruption, and I keep repeating this. It is not, corruption is just, if I can say this on national television, a sexy word to call it theft. These are thieves. It is thuggery. Okay, the culture of thuggery. These thieves, you call leaders, steal from you, spend 5 years stealing from you. Then at the end of those 5 years, they give you a lasso, they give you 50 shillings in the form of handouts. Then we blame the youth. Then they give us promises about how they're going to create jobs. But what do? They don't even fulfill what some of the little things that, the basic things. If Auma, what she says, yes, may make sense, but it will only make sense if we are a nation that actually gives, you know, the normal social services, you know, like we find in developed countries, to Kenya. We don't have that. The youth will definitely come from the farms or whatever to come to the city to become watchmen, to become house girls, to become whatever it is.
Opportunity
yes,
they
to
can
feed
get
themselves.
to feed.
Because that shamba that you're telling them, it takes resources even. I have attempted, let me tell you, as an individual, like a small patch somewhere in Gong, so that somebody doesn't grab it. You have to make it look, you know, busy.
Habitat,
so I decided
like somebody
to
lives
do,
there.
Yes. So I decided to do some little kunde and, you know, traditional vegetables. And the amount of money I put into that project was like 3 times more what I got after I was done. So you're waiting for 6 months, you're waiting for 3 months for this produce. Then there are these middlemen, there's all this thuggery around agriculture. Look at, for instance, what is happening with sugar. Mumias, did the whole community in Mumias, the whole area, were they not sugar farmers? What is happening to them now? You know, what is happening to the fact that they cannot be able to take their children to school?
I'm worried that you might have very many examples for us. David, let me come back to you. Political class. And I host them here almost every day. They complain about the culture of handouts. They say it impoverishes them. But many say that they are the reason for it. Talk to me about the relationship of the political class and handouts. And if the handouts culture was ever eradicated in this country, what would that mean for a politician when people no longer ask you for Mheshimiwa nisaidia na 100 bob? How would they then be able to propagate their messaging?
I look forward to a day when we will be able to deal a blow with such finality, the culture of handouts. I have been on the political terrain and run for office myself. I have encountered instances when people would ask me, Mheshimiwa, unatuacha namna gani? There are times when it has not made sense yet. Wahiga, there are times you would cry. I remember going to one of the remote villages of Rongo constituency. I found these little children, orphaned. So they live with their grandmother, who is aging in her advanced 80s, who cannot go to the farm anymore, yet has to take care of children left behind by parents who died out of the HIV scourge. And when I asked this little child, she smiled so beautifully. I asked her, what did you eat in the morning? She answered me, water. And I thought she was kidding because she was about 6 years old. So I asked her little brother, who was about 3.
What did you eat? Water.
What did you eat in the morning? The little brother said pee, water.
My goodness.
These kids had not eaten. For them, the fact that Mheshimiwa has come home is redemption. Do you blame them or do you blame our leaders for not putting in place interventions that would be able to take care of these people? Do you blame them, or you want to blame our social protection laws that gives them 3,000 shillings? What do you do then? That's why I'm saying, when a woman says, I'm trying to remove you from the culture of gonya gonya, we must look at it from the two sides. Of course, there are productive, young, strong people who are able to get out there and fend for themselves. And it is insulting for them to sit and wait for 100 shillings to come. But when you say the culture of help me, because she says gonya gonya, konya konya. Gonya is untie me and bind me. Konya is help me. A woman knows that that vocational institute is a product of help. She had to go ask someone, help me. Help me help our people. And you need to understand Wahiga.
That is debatable,
No,
though,
no,
because
it is.
her help was not sort of
She sought
unlimited.
it.
It's not predatorial. But anyway, go ahead.
She sought assistance. And I say this knowing very well, as I said earlier, that what Auma Obama has done is a common thing executed uncommonly well, for which I congratulate her. However, we must understand what are the deeper issues. Because the Vocational and Resource Institute in Siaya that she has done, the Sauti Kuu, is not an employment hub. It's a vocational training hub. It is one that will attempt to do just as other institutions have done, to make our people see that you can use your handy skills to generate income. The polytechnics do that. Mombasa, the former Kenya Polytechnic, you go to Kisumu Polytechnic, they do the same things. Tragically, our education policy and structure has made it look like we only go to school to get employed. Now, Auma cannot address that. That's a bigger thing. That must get back to us redrawing our education policies to make our young people appreciate that you do not go to school to get employed. You go to school to be able to execute, what you have been taught, the knowledge and skills you have amassed, to put them into work, to be able to generate an income, not to be employed. So today you go and do your master's, Wahiga. Someone is going to ask you very commonly, wow, uko na master's? This time you're going to BBC. You're going to CNN.
Because that's what's holding.
Because you get your master's to be employed, not to be an employer, not to generate income. If we are able to transform the mindsets of our young people,
And that's an if.
right from the primary school, it's like fighting corruption and our ethics and work ethics, where young people will come, they don't want to work, they want to cut deals, they don't want to work, and then suddenly they think life will move on. We must have a re-engineering of our social structure, our software.
For us to make a difference.
For us to make a difference.
Jonah, come in.
Yeah, so I was going to say that what Auma's done, first is an indictment to the political class, especially from that area. For example, we have had Prime Minister Raila Odinga. We have had people from that area, including the...
Although, would you say that that area is any different?
It's not any
the rest
different,
of
but
the
I'm just
country?
saying that,
Let's be quite honest
in general...
and be fair to the leadership of
yes,
that area.
Yes, I'm trying to be fair. The thing is, the indictment is that, these politicians are the ones who have entrenched this culture of handouts. In my Kisi language, you call it ogosera. It's like you have a portion meal.
For it in
you have a portion meal, and what you're just producing, you're milling out is money. That's what they call it. So the indictment is that for over 20, 30 years or more, where some politicians have been in politics, they've never even tried to bring something like this. These are an individual initiative. In fact, even President Obama came there just to inaugurate. Much has been done already. What they try to use, when you read the 48 laws of power and look at law number 11, it says, learn to keep people dependent on you. So what politicians are doing is to make people keep depending on them, in the sense that, if you become independent, meaning you have been given the skills and you're able to do your job, then it means you're not going to ask for them, and you're going to think now right, instead of being given 50 shillings and so on. The same thing you see in Nairobi County. Even it was the last government, somebody trying to create a government within the government, trying to run parallel kind of services which the government can offer. And again, going as far as maybe giving handouts all the time. You are seeing as a philanthropist, which now we don't know what's the difference now between a leadership and a philanthropy. So it's because very difficult to understand the difference between leadership and philanthropy.
Because you become a leader in this country, but you also end up being sort of a charity worker.
Yeah, you
you're
have to be a
constantly
charity
dishing out money everywhere you go.
Yeah, let me give you an example from my personal example. I can tell you, like, almost 80% of my income, I give it out.
80%?
Because of the Wanjeri thing, yeah.
You must have a very large income.
No, not a large income. I'm just telling you. Because, you know, you may have family members, your friends, you have people from the village. When you appear there, they want something, you know, out of that. And actually, some of us will come from, you know, humble backgrounds. Even our education was also supported by people who also put their hand on that. So sometimes we feel like we have to give back, even from where we come from. So if we are able to get these people something they can be able to get the skills, then they are not going to depend on the handouts. They think straight, and we have good leaders. So what I can challenge the young people. The challenge is elections come and go. We get leaders and leaders go. But can we, for once, look at what people tell us and what they give us, for once, and get the right people there to lead us and change? I'm sure one thing why my friend Osiani lost in his campaigns, even the primary, is because you didn't have enough money like your competitors. You know, so leadership is actually equated to how deep is your pocket. For example, if you tell somebody, "Oh, I want to run for an office," they ask you, "Are you serious?" What are they asking you about? They're asking you, "Do you have money?"
The time they're asking you, "Are you serious?" That's a question. Okay, hang on. Let's listen to what the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, had to say about youth potential in the country. He spoke yesterday at the launch of the Sauti Kuu Center.
The young people of this area, the young people throughout Kenya, the young people throughout Africa will learn that their voices can change the world. We've seen it happen before. It's going to be their voices that will help determine whether or not our leaders are held accountable. It's going to be their voices who are going to determine whether or not Kenya comes together, regardless of tribe and ethnicity, to build a better future. It's going to be the voices of these young people, echoing from these small villages and from big cities to determine the future of the world. I believe in them. They're not different than I am.
Wanjeri, let me bring you in to comment on what Barack Obama had to say. And of course, for you watching, you can SMS us your thoughts on this topic. 22422 is our SMS line, and the hashtag is Citizen Extra. What are your thoughts on the handout culture in this country? What can be done to eradicate it? What are the factors that lead to it as well? Let us know your thoughts, and I'll read your feedback as we carry on with the show. Wanjeri, he's spoken about the voice of the young people. And he believes that that voice is more powerful than anything else. It's more powerful than government. It's more powerful than policy. Basically, they can do whatever they want if they're united. Translate his comments to where we are as a nation right now. Do you feel the voice of the young person drives conversation, drives development in this nation?
I agree fully with what he says, but I have a big but. We do not give our youth even that opportunity to be able to bring out those voices. We look at our youth as, and I keep repeating, slaves. Basically, we are slaves in this country.
You feel like a slave right now?
Yes, but we are. And we need to be realistic to the fact that these people have enslaved us. We have the masters and the slaves. Now, look at, for instance, the youth when they're being told, "Oh, come for these entrepreneurship meetings," or so that you meet all these quote-unquote idols who are billionaires, and they made their money through business. But if you look at the history of the men and the women who are standing in front of this youth to talk to them about entrepreneurship, to talk to them about business, they have a history of theft. They have parastatals, they have companies, public resources behind them that they have stolen to be quote-unquote entrepreneurs. And these are the people who are worshipped by our idols. And when you say that our youth want easy things and all that, but where are they getting any, they can't even work for it because we're not giving them the opportunity to work for it. We're not giving them, just take another example with this youth fund and all that. You wake up every day, billions missing. NYS, billions missing. This is what we are bombarding our youth with every single day. Our children are growing up knowing to be wealthy in this country, you have to be a thief. and to be a thief, you have to be a to be able to become a good thief, you have to be a politician. So now, I take some youth from my shags in Muranga, and I give them 500,000 shillings, and I tell them, for instance, now can you rear chickens, and let's see how long it's going to take you to become a billionaire. Come on. I think if we are going to have these discussions, we need to have these discussions candidly. We need to stop blaming our youth who are desperate to put food on their table for taking these handouts. We're not giving them the opportunity to make that money for themselves. What we are doing is the people who are empowered, who are the politicians, need to make sure this culture continues where we keep them dependent. They keep them, we are waiting for these people to, when they come to the village, like now that example of that child who was saying they only take water.
Took water for
and
breakfast.
Then you hear that story, and then you get a flip, and you look at what is happening in Makueni. Do you see? So it is a governance issue, all right? It is a governance issue. They will expect you to give them handouts because you're not giving them any other choice.
Alternative.
Yes. And I think for the youth, this is what I would like to tell them. The majority, yesterday I was listening to Besije, doctor, he's in the country, he's an amazing speaker. You listen to him and you get so angry about how the majority of the young people who have the power are doing nothing. And if you look at what is happening in Uganda, for instance, and you know, 75% of the Ugandan people have only known one president since they were born. But in Kenya, we are different. We at least have and we have some space to express ourselves. When we planned, for instance, the Stop These Thieves protest, we just started it online, and we said, if you're angry enough, let's go to the street. Over 1,000 people came to the street. Those are angry people, and they did not have to be paid to come to the street. So people are waking up to the fact that they need to start raising their voices and acting against some of this leadership. I am waiting for the time where we are going to be meeting these politicians who we know are thieves. We all know they are thieves, and we put them in dumpsters like the clip that is going around from Europe or something. I want to be one of those people picking this guy and telling him you're a thief, and I dump him in a dumpster.
Fair enough. You have made your point loud and clear. David, come in, even as I know we have some SMSs. I'll be reading them shortly.
Well, I first, let me make it clear, as to Joanna, it's possible to win an election. I would say here, again, that I won an election. I am not in office. So, and the issue wasn't about money. There are other issues that were at play. But let us look at the historical injustices in this country, which brings me back to the Building Bridges initiative.
Which was discussed also over the last 2 days as well.
Let us agree that over the course of over 53 years since our independence, the way the country has been governed has sidelined economically some parts of this country. So there are parts that are doing worse than the other. Let's accept it for what it is. It is one of the things I'm glad that the president has confronted. That there are regions in this country that were put aside as we economically progressed or did not get as much opportunity because of our type of politics. And Nyanza is one of those regions. Of course, places like Ukambani are no different.
Turkana.
So I am proud as some governors have done a bit for themselves. When you talk about Kivuda Kibwana, he has seen what used to be just another tree called a mango tree in Makueni, and decided every home has a mango tree and all they do is to rot after their season comes, and decided to put people into groups, organize them into cooperatives, and start, value addition to the mangoes. And now we buy them here as either jam or juices. So our leaders have to be innovative around setting our people free. It doesn't take one man. This is a tragedy for the whole country. I was in Muranga for a burial the other time, and one of my closest friends told me, David, at 10 o'clock, you cannot even find a young people to go work for because almost every young person is high.
10 a.m.
Yes.
10 a.m. in the morning.
Which is right now.
Yes.
Yes.
So then what they will be doing is to sit and say, talk a 50, talk a so. Then they will go back drinking. Who are we going to blame for this? Are we going to blame Raila Odinga for it? Are we going to blame Kibaki for it? I am going to blame holistically what our leadership has been, holistically, over time, And when I talk leadership, it goes all the way to the chief in the village. That's a leader. It goes all the way to head teachers in the village. Those are leaders of our society. It's not about the political class only. We must appreciate for what it is that we need, as I said, to re-engineer our social, our habits. We need a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift will come from the top, but also
that was actually going to be
bottom.
my question. So where does it start?
From the top.
Is it the leader saying, I'm not going to give you anything today, and gets booed, stones are thrown at them? Or is it the person at the bottom saying, I don't have any money, but I'm not going to ask for it?
It will take both. You see, the reason I am in love with what President Uhuru Kenyatta is trying to do to crack a whip on corruption is it gives a chance for other people at the lower level to also stand up against corruption, because they know the top has shown the will to try and fix the country. The top must do its part. It's what Lee Kuan Yew did as president of Singapore. It is what he did. It's what Mahathir has done in Malaysia, or did when he was prime minister, and is trying to do now. Because then when people see that the top is trying to fix the mess at the bottom responds. That is where we were in 2002 when President Kibaki became president. We were a hopeful nation. Young people and even old alike would sit in a matatu and a police officer could not take a bribe. We had the guts to tell them, you guy, you can't do this. We could repudiate them. We no longer can do that because over time there hasn't seemed to be, there hasn't been the will. Now, when we show the will from the top, the bottom will correspond to what the top is doing. Like Obama said when he was running for office, I can try and make all the policies I want, but I will not come to your sitting room to switch off your TVs for your kids so that they study instead of watching TV. All of us have an intervention towards our society. The parents, we live in a society where mothers do not even ask their children. They show up, they're just from campus, they come with a V8 worth 18 million, and the mother just jumps into the car and says, wow, my child, the Lord has blessed you. And he's called for the village Harambes, and the pastors cannot confront them and ask, so what do you do in the city that can afford you such a lifestyle?
Hang on, okay, so I'm told we have some feedback before I come to you, Jonah. And you've raised a very interesting point, David Osiani.
Yeah.
Let's look at, okay, so we have a tweet here. I think this debate on what Auma Obama said of handout culture is very healthy. It's what breeds corruption. It has made our youth zombies. Politicians have perfected it. It must stop pronto. That's at Eo Jumbe. I have, plenty of SMSs. Hopefully we can project them a bit later. Let me see here. Bunge from Narok. Yes, Wahiga, my opinion pertinent to the topic is tailored to our political culture. Politicians are fighting a battle of winning the masses and nurturing an ideology of being the best man in order to secure future chances of being elected. My argument is best extracted from the book Machiavelli, The Prince. Somebody else here says the handouts culture in Kenya is more rooted than corruption. So handout culture is worse than corruption. Ending it is impossible. Okay, I want to believe that's not true. Let me see here. Okay, you don't give us your name, but you say corruption stroke handouts. It is itself extremely corrupt to pay an MP 1 million shillings per month in a nation where approximately 95% live on less than $1 a day. Restart from there and you will rebrand a more equitable Kenya. And someone, a question here, says, Auma has done something to try and deal with the issue. What have your panelists done? It's easy to criticize. Show us different solutions. Blame, blame, blame is not a solution. Jonah, you're the unfortunate one who kicks off answering that question. What have you done?
Let me say this. Jonah is trying to register a foundation. Even before he's registered, Jonah Dick Foundation, we have a website. We are doing a few things in my village. I give, like this past January, when the exams came out for class 8, I gave dictionaries to students joining Form 1.
I won't ask you about the source of your wealth. That's a story for another day.
It's very clean.
But you say you're playing your part.
I tried to do that, yeah. And also, I can tell you, I tried once with one friend who approached me and told me, Jonah, you know what? I need to start a business. And I asked him, what business do you want to start? He told me, I want to start doing greenhouse business, whereby I do farming, then sell the produce. Then I gave him some money, about 100,000. So the guy, today as we speak, he goes to the market, he sells his things, and he's stable, and he supports his family. So if the almost same thing Auma had done, but at a very low level. So what I'm trying to say is that, for the question the person who asked there, we are doing something. We did do something. for our community. Because even us, we have come from, we have also been supported in a way.
Is there a critical mass of enough young people doing something? Are your friends doing something as well, or is it just you?
A few are doing it.
A few
are doing it. But no, the problem is we're doing the same thing the same way we have seen maybe previous leaders or what has been done, you know, in giving handouts. So even our people expect that for you to be helped, you need to give some handouts.
David is
I just want to answer this, what are you doing? Because I think the listener is trying to equate what we ought to be doing to what Auma has done.
Exactly.
Not all of us have the Obama name to be able to attract as much funds. However, I want to tell him, doing something starts from holding your MCA to account. Is he doing something?
Okay.
Doing something is about holding your partners to account. So Jonah says, I gave 100,000. We would then sit with Jonah and say, what's the source of your money so that you can afford to give 100,000, and to how many people? That's doing something. Doing something is to get even on your wall on social media,
which we have
and
seen has
just
become,
say it as it is. No one may listen to it, but you will have done something. Doing something may be about getting up to the streets when we said we are tired without caring. Because I saw when we were fighting against corruption and said, let's go to the crowd. Again, the politicians have a very beautiful way of cutting us into pieces and say, oh, when our children were dying in Kisumu, they were quiet. Today, they feel the brunt of corruption. Baba, nyamaza tu usionge. So suddenly, we again segregate into our tribal cocoons. Doing something is not about money only or structures that we see.
Okay.
It's about
Also,
social.
I think
it's about social? Sorry, I wanted to get your last point.
No, it's okay.
Okay,
Proceed.
go ahead, Wanjeri.
No, it's, you know, when somebody asks, what are you doing? It really is shocking that you'd ask that, what is somebody doing? What Auma said, some of us have been saying for years.
All the years, yeah.
We have not received the same backlash, maybe because we don't have an Obama name, perhaps.
Maybe because you say it differently.
But the issue of handouts, the issue of telling citizens you need to stop receiving, if you start receiving that money, if you continue receiving that money, you will not be able to keep these leaders accountable, right? So them bribing you to keep silent for 5 years is what they are doing when they give you these handouts. We have been saying it for years. All right, and now another person can even look at what Auma has done, for instance, as also a form of handouts, because most likely she got money, donor money, to be able to put up this center. Some of us, for instance, who wake up at 3 a.m. because we've been called to go and rescue a child who's been raped in Kibera or wherever, we use our own money. And even if we sit down and write a proposal and say, please kindly, can you be able to help so that we can be able to rescue more kids? Nobody's even going to look our way because, you know, we are not known or we are not influential enough. I do not know. So people are doing things differently and in their own spaces. When people, for instance, as I keep, and I like using this example of the protest we recently organized. That protest was organized by women, the Stop These Thieves protest. Most people don't know that. But it is women who sat down and said, you know what, let us do this. Let's go on social media, let's start this hashtag, let us make noise. Suddenly, women are calling from Mombasa, from Kisumu, from Eldoret, from wherever, and they're saying, we also want to do the same exact protest you will be doing in Nairobi in our own counties
or areas.
And they organized, and the ones who could protested, and we shared one equal message across the and it is women who did it. So people are doing things in their own spaces. It may not look like much, but we are.
It might not be visible at the national level, but
yes. Recently, I wrote a long post about Moranga, and and asked Moranga people, come on, we are feeding cows twigs from trees. Okay, our water has disappeared. Streams and rivers I grew up seeing and jumping over are not there anymore. We are eating monkeys. People are making it a joke on social media, but we are now getting to that point where we are getting aid, Moranga of all places. And I wrote this post, and I got a call from one of the county officials, and they said, you know what, you're putting Moranga in a bad light. You haven't seen ABCD. And I'm like, I don't live in Moranga, but I can see from a distance. And when I come there to see my relatives, I am seeing the poverty. When you talk about the alcohol, do you know that alcohol is being made by leadership in the local communities? You know, that is why it's not going to end. They manufacture it. Yes, they manufacture it. They keep our youth enslaved. Now, when you keep them in that zombie-like state, as somebody has said.
Yes, somebody actually said zombie-like state.
How do you expect them now to rise and say, and recognize, by the way, if Moranga County, as an example, they're spending 350 million to build houses for the governor and some other rubbish like that. And what can that money do for us as youth? You'll not have time to think like that when you're being given something for 10 bob, this small, and you black out for hours.
And that's how your day is spent. I want to get a final round of comments. National government system has been in effect since the 1960s, and many believe it has not worked. So we went into the county system. We could say devolution is still quite young, so let's not be too harsh on the counties. But I want to get your thoughts on what needs to be done, one, to improve devolution, because many say that could be one solution, but also public-private partnerships, which is what Auma has done. She got, I'm sure she's working with the county government to some way or the other, but at the same time she's gotten donors as well. How can we bring about that sort of development and move away from serikali, especially national government's idea where the president has to come to your village for you to actually get change? And David, maybe I could start with you.
Devolution has been good for this country, Wahiga. And people may say we've devolved theft. But as I heard someone jokingly say, let it be stolen at the local level.
And they were serious.
Because at the top, it's crazy. After all, it will be stolen, which is unfortunate. We've gotten to a point where we beg leaders to steal a little. It seems we have gotten to a point where we agree that theft is normal, and we must not. However, as I have advocated earlier, one, our county leaders must themselves show that they are capable of handling those resources in a stellar way. That out of the few billions taken down to the county, they can make the most of it. Our counties have enough brains to be able to generate, even agreements, PPP agreements, that will bring resources to the counties. However, I must warn, most of the time when we get into these public-private partnership agreements, we do not know what's in the dotted lines, my brother. Even donors. I have the privilege of having worked for the corporate, for government, and also for the civil society. So I know. You will get the money, but the dotted line, what they want from you when the money comes, is sometimes a massive departure, even from our values, ethics, and culture. We must also be able to know that that's what complicates some of these issues. But we have to stem out corruption, then manage our money well. Then the leadership of the government must still commit to devolve much more funds to our counties if we're going to make them stable. Yes, one would say institutions are good, but they're as good as the people leading them. Okay. I say that every time. You may be as good as heaven without an institution to run, Wahiga. However decent you are, however great Ocean may be, without an institution to run, your talent will not be seen. You may have a great institution with wonderful structures, good laws to get you by.
Without the right people.
But without the right mindset and attitude, it will count for nothing.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, let me say the first 5 years of devolution gave us an experiment to see how different people or different leaders in different counties will handle devolution. And the clear leaders come out to, we have seen some counties do very well. For example, Makueni County, where right now everybody goes to hospital, actually is paid for by the county. Kakamega County is another example. So this devolution has given us, it has worked. Where it has not worked, the problem has been on the leadership. For example, in my county, Kisii County, in 2015, the governor tried to export avocado to Mexico. And they only did it once. They brought people from abroad who came and set up the equipment, and they just did only once and never did it ever again. I don't know what happened. They should have been taking advantage of the AGOA agreement, which we didn't have time to talk about these agreements of the presidents of the U.S., whereby they could actually continuously export to the U.S. instead of exporting to Mexico, which Mexico feeds the U.S. avocado. Instead of doing the other way around, they would have just done
straight to America, get a better price.
Well, yes. So you see, Makueni, they have now something in the shelves. We can buy their jam, we can buy their juice, something they have shown. So devolution has worked. Where it has not worked, leaders have not worked well. And that's where it comes to the people we elect as the Kenyan. So let's look for leaders who are going to deliver and put them on devolution. And I'm very certain that they're going to deliver.
Look for leadership. Wanjeri, wrap this up for us.
Yes, devolution for me is a beautiful thing. You know, going by some of the things that we have seen happening. But it has also unfortunately created opportunity to create even more thieves. And these thieves that we have put in leadership, the governors and all that, well, except, I don't know, I have a crush maybe on Kibwana or something. But you can see he's working with what he has. Now, when I look at places like in the Northeast, and you see some of the problems that are happening there, okay, fine, there's been marginalization over time.
For many years.
Yes,
50
we
years.
accept, we acknowledge that. But now, even in the, you know, from what they have, the little they have in the little period they have been given, what have they done with it? Nothing. They are buying houses, you know, all over Langata, South Sea, you know, entire estates with money meant for development in these areas. So though it is good, it has created an opportunity for more thugs to become, you know, to get into leadership, which is very unfortunate. But I think, Maura, we need to stop this habit of just bombarding our youth with negativity. You know, you are useless, you're not trying hard enough, you're not... They do not have a way of trying hard enough. We have so demoralized our young people that all they do when they wake up is figure out, how am I going to feed myself today? And because they can't, they go into a state of depression. And you know, we keep even laughing at people when we say the children are not leaving their mother's houses. But they're leaving to go where? You know, they go into a state of depression. And what happens is after you get in that state of depression, you go into addiction. So it becomes a vicious circle where our youth are so disempowered, you know, and all we do is bombard them with how hard, you know, you're not trying hard enough. Why can't you be like me, who was again a chicken seller and now I'm now a billionaire? You know, and we need to stop doing that to our children. We really need to stop it. And I am a mother of 3 children, and I feel so sad when I look at my kids and I'm like, where is this? And that is why I am doing what I am doing.
You're doing what
you
you're
know,
doing.
that is why I wake up every day and I tell them, we need to wake up. We need to literally, I'm telling you, pick this. If it was a politician, did I ask you who's on the panel?
Yes, you did.
Because I do not, me
If
and
there was a
politicians,
politician here?
no, I would literally pick him and put him in a dumpster.
No way.
I'm serious. That's how angry I am. And as Kenyans, we need to get that angry. It is our money. These billions, we're talking billions. You know, the other day I was reading an article about how, for instance, what is happening with the Chinese. They've taken over SGR and all that. I called it whatever I called it from the day I had it is, you know, we come up with projects to eat, not to benefit the people. And these guys are living in an estate, exclusive, with security. Our cops are guarding them, you know, armed security, blah, blah. We're spending $1 billion shillings, 1B, to keep these people in Kenya to run the SGR. Those jobs, that money, what would it do for that youth you're saying, Jaribu? You get what I mean?
Good. We need to wrap this up because now you're...
No, I'm thinking, I need to
30 seconds each.
Okay, go.
30 seconds each. Jonah?
Well, so I want to say that we've talked about, we have blamed politicians a lot. And it's also high time that we, the people, also try to look at ourselves. That's what we call locus of control. Locus of control is in the sense that you or an individual tries to understand how things happen around them. Some people who have internal locus of control feel like things happen because they're responsible for that, and others who have external feel like things happen because people from outside are the ones responsible for what they do. So we need to make sure that we do this so that we know that whoever we elect, it is us. It's a reflection of us. It's not like it just became bad because it was elected. We are the one who saw that person, his capability, and gave me that responsibility. We have to stop that.
Okay.
I want to tell my sister, you know, not all politicians are like that. Kivuta Kibwana, who you cherish and have a crush on, is a politician.
Yes.
So there are politicians who in their
special.
spaces are attempting to do what is right. It may not be out there. I have celebrated them time upon number. So it's not all politicians who are bad. There are people who in their private space, because when we say that, we forget that we have pastors out here fleecing their flock with the mbegu, and that's worse corruption because people go there to seek solace for their tired souls, and they are literally robbed from, and pastors become billionaires and call you and say, oh brother, The Lord has blessed me. Okay? Now, we also need to create deliberate policies, Maura. Maybe it's because I am a policy junk. Our policies in this country, remember, you know, I got in as Abbas was just saying that disaster management policy is just about to be made. All these years.
All these years.
We've had these disasters. They happen. El Nino 97, we did not have a disaster policy, disaster management framework, and an authority to do that. 20 years later is when we want to pass it. You see, this is where the problem, we need to create policies. And these policies must be created to also create economic opportunities for young people. We need young people on the decision-making tables, but our young people who have made it there, some of them have shown themselves worse than the old people. So we need credible young people doing things in their spaces for the betterment of the nation, whether it's a career talk back in your former high school or just engaging in political cafes at your, you know, under the tree in your village and talking about where we need to go from here. We need people who are doers. God just needs a few good men and women.
All right, I think that's a really good place to wrap up this discussion. Let's take a look at some of your feedback. I do have a lot of SMSs, but we'll look at some tweets. Okay. Mudkal says, we're all responsible for this culture. In my language, we call bejo bejo. I hope I've said that correctly. Yeah. Time for a paradigm shift. Let's all unite to end this as a country. Okay, Abednego Ainga, it's now a ripe time. We as the youth should stand out and deal with all politicians dishing out money instead of empowering us. We are our own problem. Okay, it's interesting. And Thumbi, there is no culture of handouts. There is a culture of impunity that has robbed our people the dignity to make a living the right way. Very interesting one there, Thumbi. I think I know who that is. That's how we wrap up this discussion. If you're watching Citizen Extra, stay with us. We take a short break. We'll be right back. And to each of my panelists, thank you so much for joining me and really being very honest today. We'll be right back.